In this video, I want to take a little bit of your time just to kind of skim the surface by way of introducing you all to academic writing and critical reading. All right, well, you may be asking, what's that? Academic writing? Psh. Well, you guys write all the time, whether you realize it or not. You text message, you send emails, you tweet, you use some sort of social media, a day planner, a journal, even a grocery list. You guys write. The act of writing is something that you guys do all the time. But academic writing, the kind of writing that you'll be doing in this class and every one of your other classes at Germanna and even beyond, is very different. And some characteristics of academic writing is in this list here. Evidence of thought, a clear qualified thesis, introducing or responding to what others have said, acknowledgement of other perspectives, having carefully documented sources, and a confident and authoritative tone with an attention to correctness. These are all characteristics of academic writing, and like I said, this is the kind of writing that you'll be doing for this class. Now, there are some basic principles for academic writing. And the first is to have a clear purpose. You always want to consider the prompt that you're given. For example, in this class, I will always give you a prompt for every big major writing assignment and even the small writing assignments that you'll have to consider what I'm asking you to do. What is your goal? And some common purposes, and these are purposes that you'll be doing in this class, are to persuade, analyze, synthesize, or inform. Once you figured out your purpose, you'll also want to figure out a logical organization. Academic writing always has some sort of introduction, has a number of body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Academic writing also has clear and complete explanations where you show your thought process, you explain ideas carefully, and you connect concepts together. Finally, and this is kind of the big thing with academic writing, is you always want to indicate why your topic, why your subject, why your argument matters. So what? What are the larger implications? What makes your ideas different or significant? In other words, tell your reader why they should care about what you have to say. I know I just breezed through these kind of basic principles, but these are concepts and ideas that we will be working on all semester long, and we'll be laying the foundation of these types of principles in our first unit. The other thing that I want to talk to you guys about is critical reading. And you'll be doing a fair amount of reading in this class and in all of your other classes, for that matter. And the idea of critical reading is very different from the reading that we do on, say, an everyday basis when we're scrolling through our social media feeds, when we're skimming articles, when we're reading signs on the roadway, right? The kind of reading that you'll do in this class is critical, and I want to talk a little bit about that by first asking you guys to consider what a text is. Now, in your brain, you may be saying, well, it's anything that's written, right? And to that extent, you're not wrong. However, academically speaking, a text is anything that can be read and anything that conveys material. It's not limited necessarily to words on a page. You can academically or critically read a photo or a movie, which for your first paper, you'll be academically reading or critically reading 2 films, right? So it's not necessarily limited to the words on a page, but anything that can convey information or material. Some goals for critical reading are as follows. You always want to identify the argument that the author is making in order to recognize the author's purpose or intent. You want to understand the author's tone and rhetorical strategies, and we'll be talking about these throughout the course of the semester. Identify bias, and I do want to say this really quickly, that all text, no matter who writes it, is biased in some kind of way because we are all people and we all write based on our experiences and the things that are important to us. So I don't want to say that there's not something that there are some things that can be written objectively speaking, but in terms of this course and in terms of a lot of the things that you'll be using as sources and things, always have some sort of bias, and that's not necessarily bad as long as you're able to recognize them. And finally, your last goal for critical reading is to develop an informed response based on the author's argument, details, evidence, analysis, and conclusions. So you always want to make sure that you've read it clearly enough to develop some sort of reaction or response, one that's informed. So some strategies for critical reading. Again, the first thing that you want to do is to consider your purpose. What is your reason for reading the material? Are you scanning for information? Are you getting an overview of a text? Are you trying to relate new content to existing knowledge? Are you reading something in order to write something, to critique an argument, to learn something, or just for general comprehension? Another way of after considering your purpose, you always want to take a preview of the text. In other words, skim the text for basic ideas. The title of a text is always a good indication of what like for example, the article #shame on you, right? That title tells you a lot about the article in and of itself. Sometimes there are subtitles or headings that give you an indication of what that section is going to be about. You can always check out the first and the last paragraphs because that too gives you an indication of where the author wants to take you, and it gives you an overall, in the last paragraph, an overall lasting impact that they want to stick with you. Visuals also, if there are visuals in a text, can also give an indication of what the article or what a text is about or going to cover. You also want to consider the context in that, what is the author's purpose? Who is the author's intended audience? What's the genre of the text? What do I know about the author? What's his or her stance or position? And when you go through and do the summary response assignment for this week, I'm going to be asking you to do some of these pre-reading considerations. And finally, like with academic writing, you always want to look at the larger context of a text that you're reading. In other words, what's motivating the writer? Are they responding to other arguments? And then finally, the so what. Why is what they're saying, why is what their argument argues important? So what? Why does it matter? What's the larger implication or significance of the text? And finally, once you've done the critical, the best way to kind of indicate that you've understood what you've read is being able to summarize the material. And if you're able to summarize the material accurately, then you're able to respond. And on that note, I want to pick up in another maybe 10-minute video talking about summary response. So stay tuned.